Okay, I see it's 12:02, so we'll get going. On behalf of all of us at Cornerstone Bank, I would like to welcome you to our discussion about cybersecurity. As we live out our mission, we give straight answers and the best possible financial options. We believe your safety, particularly your cyber safety, is as important as getting you into the right account or cash management offering. So once again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Stacy Tronson, and I'm the Enterprise Risk Manager here at Cornerstone Bank. And Kirk, if you would advance the slide, please. Joining me today in this conversation are teammates Kirk Snewstead, our Information and Physical Security Officer, and Megan Winterborough, one of our Cash Management Officers. As this conversation is for you, please take note of a few housekeeping items. For purposes of this presentation, everyone is currently muted. However, we encourage you to utilize the chat function with questions, and we will be monitoring that. In addition, we've got our bios at the end of the presentation. In the event that you get back to work and have a question that remains unanswered, please utilize that contact information. We will also allot time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So let's dig in. Today we're going to talk about prevention, identification, and protection, really cybersecurity front to back. Although this topic really warrants an all-day meeting, we're only going to take 45 minutes and give you lots of information in that time. So go ahead, Kirk, go to that next one. So if you're someone who's into watching about cybersecurity for your business, you can appreciate that it feels a lot like this slide. Lots of data coming at you and not much of it good. So let's take a second to break some of it down. Ransomware attacks have increased from every 40 seconds just 5 years ago to every 11 seconds in 2021. For those of you who were doing the quick math, yes, that's 90,000 attacks a day, approximately. Further, the average lifespan of a data breach has increased from 279 days 2 years ago to 287 days in 2021. The important information to take away from that is that the faster a data breach that can be identified and contained, the lower the damage and cost. As Kirk will get into a little bit later, the highest cause of all breaches are us, human error. As you can imagine, the costs of cybercrime have increased dramatically and are projected to be in excess of 10 trillion by 2025. According to a study done by IBM, in 2021, the most expensive data breach vectors included business email compromise. Again, that human error was the top at $5 million. Phishing and malicious activities were both around 4.6 million. Social engineering and vulnerabilities in third-party software were lower, but still both exceeding $4 million. The gloom continues as the risk rises. You can see we have a shortage of cybersecurity talent as well, with 1.7 million results on Google for cybersecurity jobs. The bad news is, although we have those openings, the criminals are still clocking in for work. So when you look at that's a lot of the why, I want to give you some more information because unlike the people who are sitting home and doing nothing about that, you're here trying to learn and do something to protect yourself and your business. So again, let's take a step backwards. The infograph on the left, that is one that is utilized to reflect a variety of different things. In this case, how we are using that infograph is you're looking at the internet in its totality. The amount sticking out of the water represents 4%. 4% is what we know of the internet, that gigantic expanse of information. But we have 2 billion sites on which we complete roughly 72,000 searches a second. That's just reflecting that 4%. When you see that bottom 6%, that's the dark web. That's a space where not everybody knows everything about that. However, most of it is criminal activity. The business of the dark web, however, has become a lot more sophisticated. There are business websites, just like your business website. Instead of offering a sale for a retail product, what is on sale is actually your personal information. The slide on or the graph on the right shows you how much for your social security number, for example, is $1, unlike your medical records, which is $50. You can see some of your credit card information is up to $60 and so on. Definitely, it is a reflection of the quote from the bottom right. There are two types of businesses, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. So it's important for you to look, learn, and ask questions. To give you a feel for the most common situations we've seen with our customers, really looks at that spoofed emails. A year ago, they were much easier to spot. The old wire immediately $10,000 to some location emails that were supposedly signed by your CEO often had incorrect language, typos, etc. Not many fell prey to that. Fake emails this year, however, are more sophisticated. Recently, for example, we had one situation where a fraudster hacked into a business. That business had customers. They identified those customers through their hack and sent out emails. And the emails were far more sophisticated. For example, the email read, we recently changed bank to pay your invoice. Please send here. And that information was it looked very real. It had a logo, it had a signature block that very much replicated the actual business. The only indicia of fraud there was on this phone number in the signature block, two numbers were transposed. So certainly there's still indicia of a fraud, but that situation was very much more difficult to spot. Although we were able to retrieve most of the funds, as the wire fraud was caught very quickly, again reference that speed at which you can identify reduces the risk. We got that $100,000 back for our customer, but certainly the surprise you can imagine is that customer or that company who sent the email, they were not our customer, but you can imagine they had other customers to which possibly the email went, changing their payment. So definitely it's out there and it could be you. When we look at one of our attendees at registration had asked a question about how long do we leave your account on fraud status after one or a fraud has been experienced by your company. As we live out our promise to you that I mentioned earlier, due to the nature and extent of what can happen when a fraudster is in your system, we actually will work with you instead of just flagging your account to close that account and provide new accounts in all products so that you will be able to ensure that your payments on a go-forward basis are really yours. And Megan will talk about more of those products specifically as we get through our presentation, but Positive Pay is an example of one that allows you to empower and protect you and your business. If there's a regulatory filing that's required as a result of the suspicious activity, that will be completed as soon as possible and after the investigation is completed. So definitely the why behind it is clear. Perfect example, perfect segue to turn over to Kirk, who will talk about prevention. Kirk?
And I'll take myself off mute. That'll work. I want to thank everyone for attending today and taking the time. Like Stacy said, you're putting forward the extra effort to grow your knowledge and to be that shield for your business and your accounts. As we see up here, it's one of the more common phrases I use just to get people aware of, changing your mindset a little bit about security, because many people see it as an annoyance. But the opposite of security is not insecurity, but convenience. When we make things easier, we open up doors for those threat actors that are trying to exploit your business, your systems, or your financial accounts. And some of the things that you can do to prevent, the number one is education and awareness for you, for your employees, and even your vendors, for how you guys run your operation, so they're aware of why you're putting certain procedures into place for your security. Education is key to strengthening, your employees. We inherently want to be helpful, and the threat actors will work to take advantage of that. Having regular and continual training is the best way you can what you can do to overcome this. This will keep you and your people aware and alert to incoming threats. One other piece that comes in on that is something done in larger organizations, and it's something that you can take home, is tabletop testing. It's basically a situation where you look at specific scenarios with the people in your organization that would be affected and be responding to it, and have those discussions, mock drills of what are we going to do if our business email is compromised, we get ransomware on a machine or the whole network. If someone gains access to our data, what are we going to do to stop that? And it prepares you for those situations. Like Stacy said, there's two types of businesses, those who have been hacked and those who will be hacked. It's a new mindset that we've had to get into over the last 10 years. Kind of going on the business email compromise, which is one of the top ways that they gain access to your systems, is spam filters. So we can reduce the number of emails that are coming in, the number of phishing emails that come in. Another piece of that also is with some of those spam filters, they offer the ability that when your email is coming in from the exterior, it'll actually stamp it and say, hey, this email is from an outside source. Be aware that it is not from anybody inside the bank or your organization. It's a nice piece to stop those, hey, this is your CEO. I can't get a hold of you because I'm in a meeting and I'm sending you this email. If they're using their legitimate email account, it will not be stamped with that marker. Anti-malware software is important to protect in the case that someone does click on the wrong email or link of a web page. It allows your endpoint systems and your servers to respond and catch that before it's able to do any harm. Encryption is another one, which is with your mobile devices, including laptops, tablets, and phones. You bring an extra threat with that mobility and that convenience, whether, when those items can be lost or stolen. On Android devices, just be aware, it's not an inherent component, and it would be valuable to check in on your devices. With iOS devices, as long as you have a passphrase or a passcode locking your phone that you have to enter every time, and that includes your Face ID or your Touch ID, those devices are inherently locked by default. Laptop encryption or any device that you're taking outside of your institution, that is something that you'll have to work with your IT department or your IT vendor to make sure that you're encrypting those devices in the case that they get lost or stolen. An example in my history is we had, working in a medical facility, somebody had their car broken into and they had the laptop sitting in their back seat and the laptop was stolen. One of those pieces of keeping those devices safe, it had encryption. We were able to do a remote wipe if it ever did hit the internet. So we had our protections there, but if we didn't, where they left that laptop was not a secure location. And if you want to just in your head, raise your hand if you've ever left your laptop, whether it's in your bag or just by itself, sitting on the back seat of your car, even though you've got tinted windows. If they get any view of it, people do commit crime as opportunities. And you never know if it's in a directed attack or if it's just somebody trying to steal a laptop. It's very inconvenient. It causes a lot of stress when that happens. One of the next parts, updates. If anybody heard just the other week, there was a big alert about making sure that if you had an Apple, an iOS device or an iPad OS device, they recommended you updating it immediately. So keeping up on those updates on a regular basis, whether it's your mobile devices, your laptops, your PCs, or your servers, it's very key to keep up on those so that as the cybersecurity community and the information security community finds threats, the manufacturers and vendors are pushing out patches to make sure that those exploits and vulnerabilities are closed or patched immediately or as soon as they can find a way to close those off. So for servers and PCs, if anybody involved with that, you'll know that Patch Tuesday is a very common phrase because that's when Microsoft pushes out their patches. Very important piece. Keeping up with the software component on your PCs and laptops, we also have multi-factor authentication. So when you're logging in, you're not just logging in with a password. When they talk about multi-factor, the factors of authentication are something you are, so your fingerprints, your face for Face ID, something you know, which is your password that you're memorized. Hopefully you're memorizing multiple passwords because we don't want to be using the same password for everything. Because if someone gets a hold of your username and password for one system, they're going to start running it through every other system out there, web pages, authentication systems, to see if you have used that same one so they can gain access to more than just the one site that it was referenced for. And then the third item is something you have. And for most people have seen those small tokens. Some of them are the size of a credit card, some of them are a keychain. You push a button on it and it gives you a code, which resets every 30 to 60 seconds. And that's, something you have. The value of that comes that if somebody does get your credentials, that's something you know, they need that something you are or that something you have to actually get in. They're like, yes, we got in. And then they realize the multi-factor is there and they're required to give something they don't have and they're unable to get their hands on. To give you an idea of the success of using multi-factor authentication, Google used a modified YubiKey, which is a physical USB key that you have to insert and actually touch when it's asked for to secure their systems. They reported the first year they used it, they had 0 successful phishing attacks. And you're talking about a company with tens to hundreds of thousands of employees across the world, and they actually went a full year without a successful phishing attack, which is a pretty amazing feat. And I wanted to add just a little bit of humor with some truth buried inside of it. I know security can be annoying and, I'll say it, inconvenient, but you have to ask yourself, are these small inconveniences worse than having your business down or unable to fully operate for days, weeks, or months? Right now, after the Colonial Pipeline ransomware, the average recovery time from a ransomware attack is 23 days. And that's only operational. That's not all the way up to having every system back up and running, but 23 days. Can you imagine your business being down for that long? One of the other pieces that we deal with is regular communications from our banks, our financial institutions. And I wanted to talk about some of the red flags so that we can, in our mind, we're mentally prepared and able to prevent the phishing attacks, which is the voice calls that we get from the threat actors. When your bank is communicating with you, what we're looking at here is a number of things that they're not going to ask for in those communications. In emails, you're not going to be asked for your account number. We're not going to be having you click on a link to validate your credentials or have you double check some items. We're not going to be asking for a social security number, any of those items. Texts, we've all probably gotten those texts that are saying, hey, blah, 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 you're going to be receiving this money. Click on this link. Most of us are going to look at that. We're not going to recognize the number. We're not going to be responding to it. Always remember, if you're not expecting it, make sure you contact the person that is sending it, whether it's them or not, to validate that. Incoming phone calls, same thing. We're not going to be asking for account numbers, passwords. If we're calling you, a lot of the banks, I know Cornerstone does, that you can actually set up a PIN for validation that will be recorded on our side. So when we call, we can ask you for that PIN. You give us that PIN, then and that's outside of your bank PIN. This would be a kind of an ID PIN, just so we can validate you when we have to call you for certain items. We know who we're calling, but we need to validate who's picking up the phone on the other side. If you do have any questions or concerns, like I said, call your bank directly or call that vendor directly, and ask for the person that was supposedly calling you. It takes an extra minute, and you've just saved your business or yourself from a fraud incident. When you're calling into your bank, you will be asked for some of these identifying factors to make sure that we know who's calling us and that you are who you are. There's additional information. The image on the right actually comes from the banksneveraskthat.com campaign that's been running since sometime last year. Definitely a resource I recommend you look at and gain some of that additional information. Now, on the outside of the prevention side, we've got the process side. And if we look at this, I'm pretty sure that that number is actually from 2020, that 43% of breach victims were small and medium-sized businesses. Verizon hasn't updated that information as of recently, but I will guarantee you that that has increased. A little bit of more humor on people like me sharing information. People aren't always ready for it. I think my favorite one is the little ghost who says, "Mine tasted awful," because they didn't take the time to look at it. And that's why we have these presentations, to help people gain that extra information. Now, to identifying the threats when they're coming in. I know most of us have seen Office Space, but I really like this one. It's, if we could just stop clicking on the phishing emails, that would be great. When we look at the IC3, which is the reporting section of the FBI, which we'll talk about a little bit later in our reporting attacks, 75% of organizations around the world have experienced a phishing attack, whether it was successful or not. And these phishing attacks, like Stacy mentioned, are getting more and more sophisticated. They're getting a hold of emails from your organization. They're copying your signature. They're copying the format of your templates, of your logos, all of that to make themselves look more legitimate. And like I'm always talking about, continual training and awareness, always talking about it. Don't always think, oh, we've got this in hand. Talk about it. Keep it relevant in people's minds so that they don't forget about it. Two of the major types of attacks that we'll be dealing with here are the social engineering and the internal fraud. And social engineering is that adjustment of the human aspect. It is the weakest aspect, and it has been since the early ages of the internet. Kevin Mitnick, who was the first cyber criminal to be the #1 on the FBI's most wanted list, has written numerous books and actually works in a security company now after his prison sentence, is still known as the king of social engineering. Whether it's in the phishing emails to trick you to say, hey, you know what, this is the CEO, we're in an emergency, I can't give you a call, I need you to take care of this right away. I need you to green dot cards at $500 a piece. And then text me at this number. It will be somebody else that's on the other side to get you to give them those numbers on those cards. Phishing attacks. That's the call from Microsoft. This is Michael from Microsoft. We have suspicious activity coming from your computer. As much as I'd like to say that Microsoft cares about your PC at home or even sitting on your desk, they don't. They're not going to be calling you about that. If they're asking for access to your computer, ask them for the information. or direct them to your IT department. I've had a number of those forwarded to me, and every single time they hang up. So create those processes so that we don't have that weakness. Smishing, the text emails, it stands for SMS. That's those random texts that you'll get about, hey, you won this, or hey, this is your CEO, I need you to take care of this. And the physical attacks, actually gaining physical access to your locations that you have. It takes somebody plugging something in on one of your network jacks that's in the business, or plugging a USB device into a computer at the location. If somebody's not keeping an eye on who's coming in, it takes them moments to do that. An example was a YouTuber a couple of years ago tested this theory with the concept, look like you belong there and no one will bother you. Two of them grabbed a ladder, an extension ladder, and attempted to get into 3 different businesses: a theater, a museum, and a dance club. The theater and the museum let them right in. Oh, if you've got a ladder, you must be doing something here. I may not be aware of it, but I'm going to let you in. Funny enough, the bouncer at the club stopped them just because they already filter their regular customers coming in every single day. In this one, I want you to empower your people to say no, to ask questions, especially for people who are not scheduled to be there and nobody knows that they're supposed to be coming. In Cornerstone, I have worked very hard, and everybody that is involved with our physical security program is there to empower our people. If you don't know somebody, ask, are you supposed to be here? What's your name? Who are you with? The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get somebody up that you're going to run into an employee that you haven't met yet, and you're going to get a chance to say hi. The best thing that's going to happen is you're going to find somebody that's not supposed to be there, and you're going to get them out of your location to make sure that you're secure. And one of the biggest things is don't rush. Make sure that you take a few moments to think about it. And the scarier one here is the internal fraud. That's where somebody from inside is either helping somebody from the outside or they're initiating the attack themselves. Brian Krebs with Krebs on Security, a very well-known reporter of cybersecurity news and information, published an article recently that fraudsters are trying to hire disgruntled employees to drop malicious software on corporate networks so that they can gain access and drop their payload of ransomware into the network. It's not, I don't get to talk about the greatest things. I get to talk about the things that make your stomach turn a little bit. But take the time to think, don't be rushed, and be aware of all the threats that are out there so that you can be prepared for what's coming next. Next, in the identify portion, we've got Megan with some of the tools and services that we have at Cornerstone Bank to fight against some of the financial fraud.
Thanks, Kirk. Kirk does get to talk about those unfortunate situations, and I get the opportunity to chat about what Cornerstone offers our customers, both on the retail and the business side, to help mitigate some of that risk and to help put you and your online banking users and your online banking in a better situation to help mitigate some of that fraud. So at Cornerstone, we have several different online tools available to customers to help monitor accounts, transactions, and prevent that fraud. I will touch on several of them. Some of them are more business focused. We do have them on the retail side, and then some of the products do cross both of our platforms. So on the business banking, on the online business banking side, in terms of that online business banking platform, we have a very robust platform that for our business online banking customers, we can and do customize to each one of our customers and then their individual users as well, whether that be what type of password you have. Our operations team and the IT team are great about making sure that We have routine password updates that we also are hitting the industry standard requirements for the length of password, the complexity. That's one piece that's going to keep your username and your access to that platform safe. Within that platform, we also have the multi-factor authentication in the form of that hard token that Kirk talked about, the key fob, and then you also have an individualized PIN to go with it. Recently, over the last 12 months, we have implemented that soft token, which is the same concept, but an application you can download on your phone. We all have our phones with us all the time, so there is that point of access to add the additional layer of security when you are logging into our bank website. The one thing that we do really encourage our customers to do is have each of their users have a separate username and password. So you're not commingling access. You know, one person isn't transferring monies and then the other person is using the same username and password. So if there was a question, you know, we could dig into it and help you track that down. So our system is set up for multiple usernames and passwords underneath our business online banking. The other thing that we can do with that is we can customize each one of those users' access down to the days of the week that you want them to have access and the hours of the day. If you want it 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we can absolutely do that. And that's incredibly normal with the fact that people are working from home now, they're working remotely. But if you have a bookkeeper that only comes in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 to noon, we can set that bookkeeper's access up for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just 8 to noon to help you eliminate some of that risk if you feel that it's necessary to pare back those account access times. The system on the business side is completely individualized. We can pick and choose the accounts people have access to. We can choose the authority, whether it be view only. You want them to be able to have the ability to move monies. Do they need to download statements? Do they need to make, you know, automated payments or deposits? We can really individualize that for each user within that business online banking. And that includes, which was mentioned a little bit earlier, the ability for dual control. The system can be set up that one person can have access to move money, create ACH payments, do remote deposits, but we also have the ability to build some checks and balances in there. If you feel that that's what your business needs, we can add dual control on internal transfers, ACH, wire transfers. We can even set it on remote deposit. If you want somebody to make the deposit and you want another individual to review it and then send the deposit to the bank. All of those are flexible within our platform to help you set it up to make sure that, one, it's ease of use for you and your business, and two, it's set to whatever you feel comfortable with for each one of your users when it comes to access to that secure information, which is your account numbers, your balances, and your money movement options. So that is all available on the Bob platform. It also gives you access to that real-time account information so you can keep track of the debits and credits and what's moving through all of those accounts, whether it be a checking, savings, or a loan. One of the products that is positioning customers to have eyes and ears on actual fraud detection would be our Positive Pay product. And Positive Pay is an online banking tool that's built right into business online banking. You can set it up on a standard demand deposit account, so checking or savings. And it's an online tool that is a line in fraud detection and mitigating that fraud, whether it be on the check side or the automated payment side. And it's an additional account monitoring product. I like to think of it as a second set of eyes or an additional kind of electronic bookkeeper when I'm talking with customers about it. At Cornerstone, we offer a couple different types of positive pay. One would be check positive pay. So when whoever does your checks makes a check run, whether it's weekly, daily, semi-monthly, they upload that data, including check number, date, payee name, and amount, into our system right through online banking, and that goes and saves directly to our core. So when those checks come through the clearing end of the bank, we're going out and matching for all of those parameters that were set. And if there are any discrepancies, you're getting an email that says, hey, check 101 was supposed to be for $100, except it's trying to clear the bank for $1,000. Is that okay? Was there an error in the spreadsheet? Or did we just find maybe a case of check washing where you mailed that check to a vendor, but somewhere along the line it got intercepted and somebody changed the dollar amount? Maybe they intercepted your check stock and reprinted check stock in your name that looks just as legitimate as you were mailing out. So you can then approve or decline that check and say, nope, it was my error, I missed a zero, or no, that is not what I had intended, please do not pay that check. So it helps mitigate those checks on the actual paper side of the transaction. You can also use positive pay on the check side. It can help you reconcile outstanding items. It'll show you what is cleared, what is left to go through the account from all the check runs that you upload into the system. We also have positive pay available on the electronic side of things for ACH payments, and that works a little different. You would work with myself or our other cash management sales officer. We like to look at a couple of months of transactions on your account, and we're going to go through and we're going to tag all of those entities that electronically debit and credit your account. And we're going to help you set up in our system, tag their company ID, the name of the business, and then also associate a limit with that. So for instance, if it was a utility company, it's going to say, Sioux Falls Utilities is allowed to debit me $500 a month. Anything over that, I want to go look back at that invoice because that would seem to be unusually high for all my rental properties or whatever instance it is. So it helps you keep an eye on what is going through that account on the electronic side of things. Because every once in a while you'll see something that's like, why did I get debited for a penny and then credited back? And that is, you know, a way that scammers do try to see, is this random routing an account number an open and active account? So you have the ability, just like on the check side, you'll get a notification via email to approve or decline. If it is a new vendor and you want to add them to your list, you can add them to your approved contact list and set the limits right then and there in the system. So Positive Pay is a phenomenal fraud monitoring and detection tool that is available on the business online banking side. The one piece that we do have as well is we have teller line validation for that Positive Pay on the check side. So if somebody brings a check into any one of our locations and attempts to cash it, and you have Positive Pay, if it's not a valid check number in that check run, it will alert our tellers to dig in and say, listen, this is not uploaded in the Positive Pay check file. So it will alert our bankers to reach out to myself, reach out to your business banker, and then we'll get in contact with you to validate that you did, yes, write that check and it is okay to cash it. Not all banks have teller line validation, so that is something that we do have available to our Cornerstone online banking customers that have Positive Pay. On the next slide, you will see some of the account monitoring that we have available. Secure Alerts is an option for our customers that they can monitor their accounts and the actions on their accounts in real time. It helps customers to know the movement that's happening on those accounts. You can choose from several different delivery options in terms of how you'd like to receive those messages, email, text messages. but it allows for additional checks and balances for you to monitor daily deposits, withdrawals, debit card transactions, loan payments, and there's many other options that you can go in and specifically set up within the secure alerts that you might want to keep an eye on. So that is an option for our customers to get alerts directly to them about the money movement that's most important to you. Maybe you don't need to know every time a deposit is made, but you want to know every time a withdrawal comes out of the account. And you can go in and customize that as well within the secure alerts. And then on the card monitoring side, we do have text fraud alerts on the card monitoring side. And this is a great, efficient way to keep your card information safe. We all send texts back and forth all day long, whether it be about our kids or work or whatever. So you can set up to get text monitoring alerts on your card activity for suspicious information or suspicious items, excuse me, or whether it just be, you know, like your card was ran for X, Y, and Z. Those are all available to get details about that card activity. And if it looks good to go, you don't need to respond. But if you do think it is a fraudulent transaction and you want to take a deeper look into it, you can just reply back to the text and you will get a response that gives you the next course of action, whether it's the Cornerstone Bank team member that you need to reach out to that's going to walk you through step-by-step determining if it is fraud and then helping mitigate and resolve that issue if that's something that needs to be done. Those text alerts will prompt you to those next steps, and then one of our team members will take care of walking you through the process of resolving that fraud on the card. And then one of the last things that we have on the next slide would be our digital wallet. And as more of us have, you know, moved to a more application-based or just consolidating things, maybe you don't want to fumble around in your purse for your card, and or maybe we're not quite in stores making in-person purchases quite so much. We do have a digital wallet that's available as long as the merchant accepts it. You can load your debit card information in there, and then you can just pay right with that digital wallet. It gives you access to your funds, it's fast, it's convenient, it's super secure, and then maybe leave your debit card at home and you don't have to worry about dropping that debit card and that sort of thing when you're out making purchases. So that is another thing that is available to our customers to help mitigate some of that risk on the retail side in carrying a debit card. So that is what we have at Cornerstone. We also have several other products that we can help you set up with, whether it be to decrease writing checks or running to the bank. That also will help mitigate some of your security issues. For sake of time, I'm going to kick it back over to my other team members. But if you are a current business banking customer and you want to talk through your current setup or additional products and services, please feel free to reach out. We would always love to go over what you have set up and what other options might be available to you.
Thank you very much, Megan. Discussing all of the products and the platforms that we have in this joint fight against cybersecurity is really critical. So we talked about earlier that it's more of a game of when, not if, there's going to be a cyber attack. You might find yourself in this position. So if you go on to the next slide, our purpose is to give you some tips as to what to do in that event. So first of all, we recommend cyber insurance policies, and assuming you all have already taken that step, we really recommend that you work with your insurance provider to know what those policy requirements are. Some require that you utilize that company's fraud investigation team. Also, they might have certain notice requirements. You want to make sure you have an understanding of what those requirements are on that cyber policy so that you can make a claim in the event there is an attack. It's implied, but contact your IT team. What sometimes is forgotten though, if you outsource that, make sure you contact that vendor immediately. They will be able to assist you in next steps from their point of view with their knowledge about your system. As I mentioned earlier, time is money, so contact us immediately. Oftentimes, our ability to try to retrieve those funds, in the case of returning that $100,000 that I talked to, is a matter of how fast you acted and how fast you got that information to us. Understand your rights and obligations relative to that. Read your terms and conditions that most of us click through. Shut off access to that breached system or account. What Kirk talked about, though, I think is more poignant, is develop an incident response plan and a incident response team. Practice your plan. Make sure your team knows what their actions and obligations are in the event of a data breach. Again, I can't say it enough. Time is money in these situations, so tooling your team up with that information so that they're empowered to act and take the necessary steps is saving you dollars. Certainly, we also want to give you some contact information in the event that you find yourself in a situation of a breach. So, of course, your local police is an appropriate call. We also give you the information for the FBI in Minneapolis. As you can see, we've offered you the phone number and then also their contact portal information. Definitely, they are in this with us. But definitely, cybersecurity is something that they are there to help us with. So don't be shy about contacting them. Kirk, I'm going to pass it over to you for a few comments about CISA.
Yes, CISA is a newer organization within the federal government that sits underneath the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. And their focus is fighting against these threat actors. Sadly, we're finding that more and more of these spammers and scammers and ransomware are appearing on domestic soil, and they're fighting against that. And one of the great things that they're doing is giving us a lot of resources and tools to fight against it. So I do recommend, if you have some time today, tomorrow, the next day, 2 months down the road, just that you do it, is going to the CISA.gov website and looking at the tools and the information that they have available. They even have on-site services available to work with businesses, banks, and to make sure that we're getting the most out of the resources they have available. Just recently, we have actually gotten our Upper Midwest agent for CISA, and luckily enough, she actually lives in Bismarck, North Dakota. She's actually an adjunct professor at BSC, teaching classes on cybersecurity to help us fill that gap within our resources and our talent that's out there. And also, like I said, informing all the people that are out there, the business owners and organizations. One additional thing, the site that's listed there, the fbi.gov/IC3, that is directly to their reporting site where you can go online and report. It's a pretty lengthy report because it's actually got sections for you to upload images and other things for them to be able to respond and look at what attacks are coming out. Are they going to respond for all attacks? No, $50 to $100,000, probably not. If they are available, they deal with some very large scenarios. There is crossover to CISA and the Department of Homeland Security, so they're trying to fill that gap to make sure that there is some sort of law enforcement response that's available for us.